The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingrassia, Alderman Coatar, Alderwoman Rice, Alderman Gunther, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Martin, Alderman Ornowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderman Odenberg, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Navarro, President Reed,
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingrassia, Alderwoman Rice, Alderman Rhodey, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderman Cone, 19 present.
A quorum being present, we will be led today in prayer by Imam Mukman, who has served the city of St. Louis as at the MSI workhouse for over 17 years. He has been acting in that capacity for, on behalf of residents of the city of St. Louis and for justice, and really helping people all throughout the city of St. Louis. He is the founder and executive director for the nonprofit organization Citizens United for Social Change, whose mission is to bring empowerment and improvement to the inner city youth. One of the programs is the Unity Unity in the Community Resources Fair held every July 4th, and he's done that for over 4 years in Fairgrounds Park. Please join me in welcoming the Imam.
I'm going to start this prayer off. I'm going to say it in Arabic, and then we're going to translate it into English. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata mustaqim. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim ghayri maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. With the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praises due to Allah, the Cherisher and Sustainer of the worlds, most gracious, most merciful, Master of the judgment. You alone that we worship, and thine aid we seek for help. Please show us the straight way, the way of those on whom you bestowed your grace, not those who have brought down your wrath, nor of those who have gone astray. Ameen. We just want everybody here to know when we say Allah, we're talking about God of the heaven, the earth, the creator of all things. We don't use God because if you take that and spell it backwards, it spells dog. So we say Allah, but we're talking about the same one who created everything that's in existence. So we pray that that God, which is the one God of Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, that he bless all the board, the president, board of aldermen, Lewis Reed, and all the members here, that he guides your heart, and that you realize that doesn't a leaf fall without his permission, and that one of the attributes is al-haq, or the truth, and that as long as we stand on that, as long as we are guided and understand there is laws. Man has laws, but God's laws supersede any law. And as long as if he can grab our heart and keep us conscious of that, conscious that he is more important than anything, and we can base our decisions, base our motivation, and base our efforts on trying to do what he wants us to do. And we all know what that is, to try to have a better city, have a better personal life, and eventually have a better country and a better world. I mean.
Let's give Imam Mookman a big round of applause and thank you for all the years that you've worked in the workhouse to help turn people around and get them on a new path and show them that there are greater things that they can achieve. And the fact that they have served time in jail does not represent all that they are. So I appreciate you and thank you on behalf of my family and friends and the residents of the city of St. Louis who aren't able to thank you personally. Let's give him one more big round of applause for all his work in the community. We dispense with line item 3, introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my honor to welcome Imam Jahad Mookmin from El Mookmin in the 19th Ward, as well as Mr. Anthony Shaheed of El Mookmin in the Tawheed Youth Group, Brother Ashar Sultan Muhammad of the Tawheed Youth Group, our police commander of North Patrol, Colonel Ronnie Robertson, our sheriff, Vernon Betts, and as well as our new school board member, Joyce Roberts. But it is also my esteemed honor to welcome the believers of the religion of Islam to this distinguished body. Takbir. Y'all gotta say that better. Takbir. 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 Allahu Akbar. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you all. Alderman from the 14th.
Yes, I'd just like to recognize my former colleague, Dr. Joyce Roberts, currently newly elected member of the St. Louis City School Board, and congratulate her on her election.
All right, welcome. Alderman from the 13th.
Yes, President, members of the board, I'd like to have my honored guest, it's my honored guest today, Jeff Hans and Keith Taylor from the St. Louis, Kansas City Carpenters Regional Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman from the 22nd.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have my esteemed guest this morning, Ms. Sheila Jones from Amherst, Missouri, Chris Pickle with AT&T, and Leroy Grant with AT&T.
Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my distinguished guest today, Mr. Brian Walsh, 9th Ward Democratic Committee man, as well as the Sergeant of Arms of the Democratic Central Committee. So,
Alderman from the 23rd.
So I'd like to have as my honored guest today, Fred Searcy from the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, and Greg Meyer, committee man of the 23rd Ward and member of the Eco Devo Board.
Alderman from the 28th.
Mr. President, I would like to recognize this morning as my honored guest, Reginald Garth, who is the new Vice President of the Young Democrats of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to recognize as my special guest Dave Sweeney, farmer clerk down here at the Board of Aldermen, Jerome Murray from the License Collector's Office, and Tim Pearson's trying to hide in the corner over here.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. All my guests have been called, so everyone in here is my special guest today.
All right. Alderman from the 21st.
Yes, Mr. President. I also like to recognize our warden and superintendent of the City Justice Center in a medium security institution, Mr. Jeff Carson, who's up in the balcony.
Any further introductions? Any further? Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, members of the board and everybody else here. I want to recognize as my special guest, Mr. Tim Person. All right, yes. Thank you. and Amber Alexander. Thank you.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th, like to wrap us up?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, we're gathered here on December 14th, which is National Roast Your Chestnut Day, so everyone take care of that later. But more importantly, on this day in 1977, the movie Saturday Night Fever came out. And we are lucky to have the stunt double for John Travolta here. It's Dave Sweeney. Thank you very much.
Approval of minutes.
We have none.
Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in the aldermen's mailboxes. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for reappointment to the Cherokee Limp Special Business District. The reappointment of Jeremy Miller, who resides in the 9th Ward and whose term will expire December 31st, 2022. I respectfully request your approval of the reappointment. Sincerely, Lyda Cruzen, Mayor.
Alderman from the 9th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Cherokee Limp Special Business District.
President, I move that we accept the mayor's reappointment to the Cherokee Limp Special Business District.
Moved by the Alderman from the 9th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 24th. Seconded by the Alderman from the 24th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment, reappointment to the Great Rivers Greenway Metropolitan Park and Recreation District. The appointment of Ms. Dion Flowers, who resides in the 2nd Ward and whose term will expire January the 1st, 2022. The reappointment of Ms. Phyllis Young, who resides in the 7th Ward and whose term will expire January the 1st, 2022. And the reappointment of Mr. Neil Perryman, who resides in the 16th Ward and whose term will expire January the 1st, 2022. I respectfully request your approval of the appointment. Sincerely, Lyda Cruzen, Mayor.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Great Rivers Greenways Metropolitan Park and Recreation District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move to approve the mayor's appointments.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, entertain a seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointments to the Gardenside Subdivision Special Business District. The appointment of Mr. Daniel Stam, who resides in the 8th Ward and whose term will expire December 31st, 2020. I respectfully request your approval of this appointment. Sincerely, Lyda Cruzen, Mayor.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Gardenside Subdivision Special Business District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that we approve the mayor's appointment.
Moved by the Alderman from the 8th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That is the extent of office of the mayor.
We dispense with line item 7. Would anyone like to take any bills or resolutions from any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any bills or resolutions from any of our informal calendars? We dispense with line items 8 through 10. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 182, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingrassia, and ordinance amending Section 10 of Ordinance Number 69735, effective May 25th, 2014, codified in Section 11 of the Revised Code relating to the identification of high-merit historic properties in the city that are undergoing demolition by neglect, with addition of a new subsection C to Section 10 of the Ordinance Number 69735 regarding the determination of undue economic hardship. Board Bill 183, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingrassia, and ordinance authorizing the city's Department Division to develop and promulgate rules and regulations to be approved by the Department of Safety and consistent with Chapter 25 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis and other applicable laws regarding short-term residential rentals within the City of St. Louis. Board Bill 184, sponsored by Alderman Muhammad, pursuant to Ordinance 68937, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Representative Joshua Peters Way, which shall begin at the intersection of North Newstead and Penrose and run north on North Newstead to the intersection of North Newstead and Coatar. Board Bill 185, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance establishing a four-way stop site at the intersection of McCausland and Bancroft, regulating all traffic traveling eastbound and westbound on Bancroft at McCausland, and regulating all traffic traveling northbound and southbound on McCausland at Bancroft, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 186, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 3861 St. Louis Avenue. Board Bill 187, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 4965 through 75 Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. Board Bill 188, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingrassia, Green, and Rice, an ordinance to designate portions of the Tower Grove East neighborhood as a local historic district under provisions of Title 24 of the Code of the City, a complete description of the boundaries of the district more fully described in the body of this ordinance, and providing for a development plan including design standards to be applied within the district and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 189, sponsored by Alderman Coatar and Alderwoman Ingrassia, an ordinance approved and recommended by the Preservation Board and Planning Commission pertaining to the Lafayette Square Historic District, amending Ordinance 69112, repealing and replacing certain standards for the Lafayette Square Historic District as set forth herein. That is the extent of first reading of board bills.
Reference to committee.
To the Streets Committee, Board Bill 184 and 185. To the Neighborhood Development Committee, Board Bill 186 and 187. To the Public Safety Committee, Board Bill 182 and 189. And to the HUD's Committee, Board Bill 188. That is the extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
The following board bills were reported out of the Ways and Means Committee. Board Bill 143, Committee Sub, sponsored by Alderwoman Navarro, an ordinance repealing paragraph C of Section 2 of Ordinance 63777, approved on June 4th, 1996, as amended by Ordinance 64546, approved on December 18th, 1998, and by Ordinance 68200, approved on June 4th, 2008, and in lieu thereof, a new paragraph enacted extending the period of time during which the Cathedral Square Special Business District shall be permitted to collect tax within the boundaries of the district, and containing effectiveness and emergency clauses. Board Bill 148, Committee Sub, sponsored by Alderwoman Navarro, an ordinance repealing paragraph F of Section 2 of Ordinance 62622, approved on May 29, 1992, as amended by Ordinance 63840, approved on July 19, 1996, as amended by Ordinance 64935, approved on May 17, 2000, as amended by Ordinance 68202, approved December 8, 2008, and in lieu thereof, a new paragraph is enacted extending the period of time during which the Central West End North Special Business District shall be permitted to collect the tax within the boundaries of the district therein established, and containing effectiveness and emergency clause. The following bills were reported out of the Streets Committee. Board Bill 159, sponsored by Alderman Williamson and Alderman Boyd, pursuant to Ordinance 68937, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Von Versen Avenue, which shall begin at the intersection of Hamilton and Enright and run east on Enright to the intersection of Goodfellow Boulevard and Enright. Board Bill 165, Committee Sub, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, Middlebrook, Moore, and Alderman Boyd, pursuant to Ordinance 68937, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Cedric the Entertainer Way, which shall begin at the intersection of North Vandervander Avenue and Olive Street and run north on North Vandervander Avenue to the intersection of North Vandervander Avenue and Washington Boulevard Avenue. Board Bill 178, sponsored by Alderman Ogilvy, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute a permanent irrevocable easement which shall give, grant, extend, and confer on the city, its agents, successors, and assigns exclusive right to build, maintain a span of sidewalk improvements along the east side of Sulphur from the intersection of Sulphur and Manchester to the driveway to the north, and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 179, sponsored by Alderman Ornowitz, an ordinance establishing a two-way stop site at the intersection of Atkins and Popin, regulating all traffic traveling northbound and southbound on Atkins, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 181, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, an ordinance establishing a temporary three-way stop site which shall begin and remain in place for a period of 6 months, starting from the date on which said stop site is installed at the intersection of Blackstone and Wells, regulating all traffic traveling eastbound and westbound on Wells at Blackstone, and regulating all traffic traveling southbound on Blackstone at Wells, and containing an emergency clause. That is the extent of second reading and a report of standing committees.
We will dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 167, sponsored by Alderman Ornowitz, pursuant to Ordinance 68937, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Estella M. Daly Way, which shall begin at the intersection of Morgan Ford Road and Upton Court and run east on the 4100 block of Upton Court. Board Bill 172, sponsored by Alderwoman Martin, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate above surface, and subsurface rights for vehicle, equestrian, and pedestrian travel in the southern 169 feet of the 15-foot wide north-south alley bounded by Robert on the north, Vermont on the east, Cohen on the south, Alabama on the west, as hereinafter described in accordance with charter and imposing certain conditions on such vacation. Board Bill 174, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance establishing a stop site at the intersection of Ridgewood and Wilcox, regulating all traffic traveling westbound on Wilcox Avenue at Ridgewood, and containing an emergency clause. That is extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the perfection consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 173, committee sub, sponsored by Alderman Ogilvy, President Reed, Alderman Boyd, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderman Oldenburg, President Reed, Alderman Boyd, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderman Coatar, and Alderwoman Howard. An ordinance creating a new chapter under Title 23 of the Revised Code of the City, titled Small Wireless Facilities, and pertaining to the establishment of procedures and requirements relating to the construction and deployment of small wireless facilities, to be codified as Chapter 23.59 of the Revised Code, containing a severability clause, savings clause, and emergency clause.
Alderman from the 16th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill 173, committee substitute.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Move that we perfect Board Bill 173, committee substitute.
Moved by the Alderman from the 16th, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, I think most of you are aware of this. We're under a bit of a looming deadline from the state legislature, which was the Uniform Wireless Act, House Bill 1991, that called for all municipalities to lay out efficient procedures, policies, and a permitting process for what will be the small wireless facility deployment. Long are the days of the large cell phone towers on top of buildings and hillsides. I think they'll still be there, but what carriers and what the wireless networks are demanding now from consumers are more powerful networks, and the ability to achieve that is putting smaller radio frequencies or smaller cells down in more dense areas. So these are at the intersections in our city rights of way. So this bill lays out a proper permitting process whereby carriers can efficiently submit application to deploy these small cells, which carry certain size, dimensions, and have certain volume restrictions on how large they can be. In addition, it lays out a process whereby the rights of way of the city will be protected, and also creates a very efficient process for deploying these, because we expect a pretty rapid growth area for these small wireless cells, just to support what is the fourth generation or the 4G network, but also they're going to be very important when it comes to fifth generation or the 5G. I have a letter from the Chief Technology Officer that I am distributed and has been distributed on everyone's desk. This is also part of the banner of the Smart Cities Initiative, which this body has adopted under a couple of resolutions. So we're hoping that we can get this passed. I will be asking, obviously, to suspend the rules later, too, so we can get this finally passed before the end of the year. I'll certainly entertain questions on the board bill, specifically 173 committee substitute.
Alderman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, if the alderman from the 16th would yield.
Alderman from the 16th will yield the question to the Alderman from the 1st.
I will, yes.
I
Please
have
proceed.
not, I'm sorry, Alderman, I haven't been following this bill as closely as some of the other ones that I follow. But I know that we used to have a lot more say about where the large towers went, and that the wireless people did not like it and went to Jefferson City and basically took a lot of our authority away and kind of usurped us. So in this new board bill that you're presenting, and also the law up in Jefferson City, does that restore any of our rights, or are we still within their guidelines of they can put it pretty much any place they want to, they just have to go through a permitting process?
Sure, Alderwoman. So I think that, well, we have to, we are required to stay within the confines of state law. So they did pass certain parameters to which we have to stay in. I would call a lot of those issues are around the shot clock provisions, which is within a certain period of time. We have to approve these. They can only be a certain size. We can't overcharge from a permitting fee process. But there is, I think the City Council's office will contend this as well as I will. There are some areas of the state law which are silent and allow some flexibility for the municipalities to ensure that the public trust and the city rights of way are adhered to. And at the end of the day, these will be being put on city assets, which we will have control over and a certain say over. Now, a lot of those parameters are outlined in the House bill, the board bill that we have to stay within. But as I mentioned, there is some flexibility to make sure that we're being prudent and taking our time in processing these applications.
I understand, but we used to be, and the former alderman from the 28th that I used, Alderman McGuire used to drive him crazy because they wanted to just put them everywhere.
Right.
And he was really death on saying, no, that's not a good place. And, it doesn't look good and it destroys.
Well, there's certainly the
and
ability.
So do we have the,
I'm sorry.
Yes. So we would say no to a lot of that stuff, and that's when they went up to Jeff City, and I call it whining, but really I guess it's lobbying. And so they took a lot of our rights away. And I'm saying, do you know if we're getting any of that restored? Because they were putting them like any place, to me, very inappropriate place. Do we have any leeway to say this is an inappropriate place, or is that previous law still in effect that we pretty much got to let them put it? We can just have some control about design or other things.
So I can't speak to the macro towers, which I think was some of your line of questioning of where those can go. This is specifically addressing small wireless facilities as a defined term in the bill. And to answer your question, we do have a certain say in where those can go, because we can deny an application. The city can deny an application, for any kind of a reason.
And then would they go through the process of that, whenever we deny an application, would they go through appeals process or something like that?
I mean, I think there could be another application of, why it was denied. We obviously can't deny for unreasonable, for an unreasonable process. We can't withhold or stall an application. So the state law dictates that we have to either, by a certain period of time, I think it's 15 days in the bill, we have to say whether an application is complete or not, and then we may or may not have another 45 days to process that. So it could take longer if the application is not deemed complete. So that gives us time to make sure we can have streets department weigh in, traffic division weigh in, communications. Is additional equipment needed besides just the radio antenna they're hanging on one of our utility poles? Will a box be needed in the sidewalk? Does that complicate ADA compliance? So all those things are things that we want to widen the dashboard, which I think gives the city some flexibility. And the providers have, and industry practitioners have worked with us. They've been part of this process from a local level, because this is something I think they deem important. So I think to come back to your full circle, I think I have confidence, as well as the City Councilor's office and the Chief Technology Officer, that we have some flexibility that these facilities just can't be anywhere they want them.
Okay, and finally, I haven't read the state law. If you would provide me a copy, I would appreciate it.
Yeah,
you could email
absolutely.
me or a hard copy, whatever.
Yes, ma'am. Happy to do that.
I have no further questions.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 14th.
Question? I just have one question, Alderman from the 16th. So this would, I guess later legislation would set up a fee schedule to the providers and such for this?
hold on, would you like to inquire of the Alderman from the 16th?
Yes, I would like to inquire, Alderman from the 16th.
Alderman from the 16th, will you yield the questions to the Alderwoman from the 14th?
Absolutely.
Alderwoman from the 14th, please proceed.
So this, eventually, I guess this legislation doesn't flesh it out, but eventually there will be a fee schedule for these providers to use our infrastructure to place their, what do we call these, small cells?
So, Alderwoman, actually, yes, the state law provided provisions of how much we could charge from a application fee process as well as a rate. So the rate is that the defined term effectively is rent on a city utility pole. So depending on what that asset is, that rate can only have a certain, it has a ceiling. Both have ceilings, both the permitting, the application fee, as well as the rate. $150 is the rate on an annual basis.
Mr. President, is there any anticipation of what revenue this would bring into the city?
So my guess is that, you know, I don't have that projection. I don't. My guess is that if I had to give an opinion, my guess is both the application fees and the rates would still be well under what the actual cost might be to the city and its various departments to acquiesce.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Alderman from 21st.
Mr. President, the Alderman from the 25th was up before me.
Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the Alderman from the 16th yield for questions?
Alderman from the 16th,
Or
will you yield the
16th,
question
sorry.
to the Alderman from the 25th?
Indeed.
Please proceed, Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm just doing a cursory look through the board bill here. This is specifically just for the public right-of-way, correct?
That is
Am I
correct.
understanding that correctly? So this does not apply to if someone wanted to put a CB radio antenna on their house that's 40 feet tall, you know, this would not be applicable to that type of situation.
That's correct, Alderman. So outside the city rights of way, there will be another bill coming that addresses, you have to stay within the confines of the applicable zoning if somebody wanted to put it on either their personal assets or somewhere outside of the city property, city rights of way.
Okay. So, and then within the city right-of-way, that would be things like utility poles or alleyways, streets, et cetera. So, is there an agreement that is required between the utility company and the city in order to do that, aside from, you know, this board bill authorizing them to do such, or is there an agreement currently that's pending before BPS or anything along those lines that, you know, what is the impetus for this?
An agreement between whom?
The utility company and the city. If someone's putting, you know, an antenna up on a public utility, you know, a pole or in an alleyway or a street, they would need an agreement between the city and the utility company, generally speaking. So does this now preclude any future agreements between the city and a utility company? Or, you know, is there an agreement that's currently pending that we need authorization for and this board bill's before us?
Sure. So this bill specifically contemplates city-owned assets. So if it's a utility-owned asset, a utility pole, that would have to be an arrangement between the applicant, the provider, and that utility company. This specifically is what are city-owned assets: city poles, city rights of way, traffic light poles, things of that nature. Not anything that's owned privately by a utility company. There would have to be an arrangement worked out between the provider and that utility company.
Okay, and I also just got a memo from the mayor's office that outlines some of the reasons for this, which is very much appreciated. Wish it were on my desk when I got here. But
Certainly try down here.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, any further questions? Any further questions? Alderman from the 24th? Alderman from the
Alderman from the 21st.
21st is ready.
Yeah.
You ready, Alderman? Alderman from the 21st.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Will the Alderman from the 16th yield for
Alderman from the 16th, will you yield a question to the Alderman from the 21st? Please proceed.
Thank you, Alderman. I'm reading the House bill language now. I just wanted clarification on it. it talks about how the Department of Revenue shall prepare a report to the General Assembly on the amount of revenue collected by local governments, that including the city of St. Louis. I just wanted to know exactly how much revenue will we be giving the Department of Revenue or the state government as it relates to this bill or this plan, because it doesn't dictate if there's a particular percentage in the legislation.
I don't think we'll be getting any revenue from the Department of Revenue from the state, if that was your question, sir.
So any local tax that's attached to wireless facilities, all of that revenue, would it go to the city of St. Louis or would it go to the state government?
Well, it's a city-owned asset. If it's a city-owned asset, that rate is negotiated between the city and the provider. So that revenue would come to us. The city.
So how much revenue are we giving the state? Because I'm looking at the language now, and if I'm wrong, correct me, it says that we would be given an allocation to the state government and it will prepare a report to the General Assembly.
Well, it may be that the revenue we collect, and I might not know the answer to this, Alderman, it may be that the revenue we collect from the rates needs to be submitted to the General Assembly if that provision you're reading there is correct. I don't have that in front of me, nor am I familiar with that concept. But my guess would be if we're collecting revenue from the rates, that's reported and cataloged and would need to be submitted to the state if that provision dictates us to.
And is there a current state law that dictates the percentage of whatever we will be allocating to the state?
That I'm not sure of.
Gotcha. Thank you, Alderman. No questions, Mr. President.
Alderman from the 24th, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the Alderman from the 16th yield to questions?
Alderman from the 16th will yield a question to the Alderman from the 24th.
Well,
please proceed, Alderman.
Thank you. I was reading the bill and I was trying to figure out if the bill permits installations of these small cell facilities on street light poles or just on utility poles. Do you have an answer to that?
I believe it could be on street light poles. The green and red stoplights?
No. Street lights, like the Cobra heads, yeah.
I believe it could. If it's a city-owned asset, it could.
Okay. I think that's a point I would like clarification on. These things, they're called small cell facilities, but they're not really that small. They're bigger than most other things that would be on a utility pole. And if they are going on streetlights, I'd want to clarify or see if we can prevent that, because aesthetically, these things don't look that great, and depending on where the streetlight is, people are going to have some potentially very serious objections to that. I understand the state is going to require us to have some authorizing legislation at the local level to permit these. But in my mind, a street light is different than a utility pole and are frequently in more conspicuous places. So that point I'd want clarification on. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Also, we have with us Judge Edwards, our Public Safety Director. Thank you for coming and joining us today. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 16th, you recognize the close.
Thank you, Mr. President. I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 16th and seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd that we perfect Board Bill 173, Committee Substitute. All in favor signify. It's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingrassia. Alderman Coatar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Odenberg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderwoman Boyd. 24 aye votes and 2 present.
By a vote, you stay in the motion. Alderman from the 16th and 3rd read and finally passed Board Bill 173 committee substitute. Perfected Board Bill 173 committee substitute. You want to please proceed?
President, members of the board, I'd like to make a motion that we suspend the rules for the purpose of third reading and finally passing Board Bill 173 committee substitute.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 16th and seconded by the Alderman from the 7th that we suspend the rules for the purposes of moving Board Bill 173 committee substitute to the third reading calendar. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingrassia. Alderman Coatar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Odenberg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. 24 aye votes and 2 no votes.
By a vote, you stay in the motion of the Alderman from the 16th. Madam Clerk, please place Board Bill 173 committee substitute on the regular third reading calendar.
So noted.
Third reading consent.
Board Bills 160, 151, Board Bill 160, 51, 125, 127, 138, 166, Committee Sub, 163, 28, 29, 114, 126, 131, 162, 168, 99, 158, 109, 72, and 169.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion for the third reading consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the third reading consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingrassia. Alderman Coatar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Gunther. Alderwoman Howard. Alderman Rhodey. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. 25 aye votes.
By a vote, you sustain the motion of the Alderman from the 18th and third read and finally passed the aforementioned bills. Third reading, report of engrossments.
Board Bill 133, Committee Sub, sponsored by Alderman Coatar and Alderwoman Ingrassia, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment and Public Service authorizing the St. Louis Municipal Finance Corporation to issue and sell its new revenue bonds in order to fund the construction, repair, improvement, expansion, renovation, furnishing, and or equipping the Cervantes Convention Center in an aggregated principal amount not to exceed $105 million and containing an emergency and severability clause.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on third reading, final passage of Board Bill 133, Committee Substitute.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to third read and final pass Board Bill 133, Committee Substitute.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderwoman from the 19th. Please proceed, Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to remind everybody, this board bill would authorize the issuance of bonds to pay for the $175 million expansion and renovation to the Americas Center. As I mentioned last week, this is contingent upon the county passing similar legislation, and we'll be splitting the cost 50-50 of the renovation and expansion. This project enjoys the support of both the comptroller, the mayor's office, the county executive, presumably the county council. It's a rare show of regional unity for a building and an industry that's very important to our region, and that's the convention and tourism business. I appreciate your support last week, and I hope you will support the third reading and final passage of this bill. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
All right. Any discussion? Any discussion? Alderwoman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, this bill is no different than the bill we did from the football bill, okay, or the convention center. Same deal, same people, different actors, but everybody came aboard, everybody was going to pay for it, everybody's going to look out for it. It was going to be a football team playing here right now. That didn't happen, but we're still paying for it. So it's not so rare. We do get things together. In fact, we put our SLDC out there with the county, and we're supposed to be working together. What's rare and non-existent is any kind of development that has to do with commercial and development in North St. Louis. Here's what we do in downtown. $400 million for the Arch, $400 million for soccer, $100 million for hockey, 175, more than that for the convention center. I guess it's going to be a total of $300-something million, over almost $2 billion for downtown. That doesn't include TIFs, tax abatement, and whatever else. Meanwhile, 30% of St. Louis population lives in poverty. And then we are always saying that we do not have money to do things that we need to do in the communities and in the residential neighborhoods.
Have some order. Please proceed, Alderman.
I find it appalling that we are finally about to be able to pay off that note that we're paying out of our general revenue of $6 million. And not only are we not going to use any of that money to pay for raises for our employees who are going underwater with their health insurance. They are making less money this year. When we gave the police $6 million and the firemen $6,000 raises, the employees did not get that kind of raise. And in fact, with the 1.5% raise that they got, many of them went underwater for their health insurance because they're making less money. That's wrong. We ought to be paying, when we pass bills down here that talk about living and minimum wages, we ought to be thinking about our own employees. We're not doing that. we're not talking about looking at or even thinking about North St. Louis and what needs to be done. We break our laws every single day when we don't cut our grass, when we had a young lady dragged into a building and molested and hurt because we got all these vacant buildings. But yet but we're not doing anything about that. A little bit more up under the current public safety director, but I'm prejudiced because he's a long-time relationship with the public safety director. But more could be done if we took some of this money. I met with the convention tourism. I heard all what they had to say about why they needed this money. I am disgusted with what we're doing because it's like saying, well, Daddy needs a new job, and so we're going to move. And so in order for Daddy to get this new job, which one of these days he may make more money, my kids are not going to eat, they're not going to get shoes, they're not going to be able to go to schools. It's all this stuff that they're not going to be able to do. That's how I feel like we treat North St. Louis, okay? And in fact, it's not a feeling. It's when you look at the development in North St. Louis, and then you look at downtown, at what point do you say, before we put any more money, not one more dime, let's do some things in North St. Louis. We should have Natural Bridge developed from Grand or all the way to the city limits. It makes no sense. It is a natural corridor. But the only little development that we have on Natural Bridge has been that part that I did years ago. When I was gone for 10 years, we did nothing. And so we're not, now that money that should be going.
Hold on for a second. Young man, we need you off the back wall. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Please proceed, Alderman.
That money that we should be putting back into our general revenue to do things like that is now going to go for a convention center because we need to expand, because we want to have bigger convention centers, because we need more hotels downtown. And the sponsor said last week about, well, hotels will close down. I got so many emails, it's funny, from people who are actually connected to the tourism to downtown and on these boards saying we already have 5 or 6 new hotels in the loop right now that's going to be central and downtown, and that no, that's not true is what they told me. So that was interesting. But even if it were true, you cannot continue to build downtown on the backs of neighborhoods, and especially North St. Louis. If South St. Louis thinks that's great, and I don't understand why the people in North St. Louis think that's great. I don't see why anybody thinks, when you look at the grass and vacant buildings and the disrespect of the communities that's happening, that we would want to take all of this money and put into a development for the convention center at the expense of our own community. When I drive out the edge of my street, what used to be the 20th ward is now the 4th ward. It is and the public safety director knows, it's not that far from me. Euclid looks like hell froze over. It didn't look like that until this board, with their ignorance, tore my ward up and put it into the 4th ward. And the 4th ward, as hard as the alderman from the 4th works, it is so much stuff to do there. It's so many houses that need to be torn down. It's so much grass that needs to be cut. When he was sick, I tried to help with things that were in the 4th ward to try to get grass cut. It is exhausting. He doesn't need 1 NSO. He needs 5 NSOs probably, and they need to be working 24 hours a day on the 4th ward. So when we keep sending these messages to the community that we're going to build one more thing, and then we're going to come back and rebuild, and we're never going to build anything in your community, the people in the community hear it. Then the Democrats run along and they say, why aren't the black people coming out and vote? Voting for what? Claire McCaskill, the reason why people didn't come out and vote because they didn't see what you were doing for them, okay? So you're leaving and you're blaming it on the president. No, it's blamed on lack of appearance by people who ask for votes, okay? They run up in North St. Louis and they want the black women who are the Democrats to vote for them, but we need to see economic development. We need to see how can you have a whole side of town that doesn't have a hardware store? We are grocery store barren. I mean, it's horrible. We have 1 Snooks, a few Aldis, and a few Shop and Saves. That's it. no sit-down restaurants to speak of. The third ward has a few now. Just anything that you would think to build on to attract people to, the city's not doing it. We pay a whole planning department. They all need to be fired because they can't seem to find or plan anything that's in the best interest for the working and middle-class people that have lived in North St. Louis forever. We have had what used to be the first ward, the second ward, the 27th ward, the 21st ward and the old 20th ward used to be very middle-class black wards. The people still live there. They still own their property. But it's hard-pressed to attract any new people to the community because the city is not doing anything. And they continue to send millions and millions of dollars, and we continue to do it. So if we continue to do this, we're telling our constituents we don't care. So when people don't call me and ask why the grass is not cut, call the mayor's office and ask them because that's who's responsible anyway. And she doesn't care that your grass is not cut and that everybody who lives in their houses, their grass is cut. It's the city that's breaking the law, be it the LRA or some other property that the city is responsible for. Don't call me about vacant properties and people being drugged into them because that is responsibility of the mayor, and she does not care. She cares about downtown and about getting sports facilities and conventions, and there's always a reason about why we have to do this at the expense of where we live. I don't understand it. What I do want to say is that I want roll call. I'm opposed to this, but I want to tell people there's an election coming up in a few months. Notice and look at these votes, okay? And then what you can do, vote them all out of office, and when it come around to the odd numbers, vote us all out of office too. We really don't need a board of aldermen. I want to say that mostly you have convinced me. I have always thought we needed 14 aldermen for the betterment of North St. Louis, but we don't need but about 2 or 3 aldermen. Those are the ones that are going to be the checks and balances on the mayor's office. If all we are rubber stamps and saying, yeah, what they said at the expense of my own community, I've never seen anything like this in my life before. This is ridiculous. We should not be doing this. Not only are we taking the $6 million that could be put back into the coffers, we're adding $2 million more from the general revenue with the thought that, oh, we're going to get more money. But I have asked, and I've asked repeatedly, please provide me a copy, and I'm going to ask again, of those things that we projected that actually happened, because I can give you a long list of projections that did not happen, from the earnings tax that was a lie, from the current mayor sponsored that, from the hotel that's down there that went bankrupt, from the football stadium, from letting the Blues be over in our building and saying that they would have to fix up the property and then changing it and giving them millions of dollars. We need, right now for forestry, there are people, I'm getting all these emails, why isn't forestry doing what they're supposed to? They can't do what they're supposed to because they have a minimum staff and they need about $2 million. That $2 million that you're giving every year, they need that to hire enough staff, and they need to be working full time to clean up our city. They can't work. It's not Greg Hayes' fault that he can't do that. It's not Alan Jakowski's. They both work really hard. But we go to a skeleton staff when we need to have a full-time staff working and doing things. And when they asked the mayor about it, she said, oh, they don't have enough. But you don't think that it's all right that we should take any of this money and put toward hiring more staff, paying the workers? So what's so interesting to me, while we don't pay the everyday worker, there are some people who have gotten $30,000 raises in one step, okay? So we seem to devalue our workers, which I want to say again, all the workers that work for the city are very valuable workers. They are all first responders. They deserve respect, and we ought to be paying them. And we should not be saying that we want to pay minimum wage and living wages, and we're not doing it here. We had hearings, as the chair of the public employees, we had hearings. The workers brought in and showed us the comparison of what they made versus what other people in the community made. We are way underpaying our workers. I'm surprised. I know that the construction unions want the jobs, but for the employees, you guys need to really be saying there's something wrong with this. Not only did we not take any of the money and put back for us, that we're giving some more. How is it that what we need to do to service the people, the everyday people who expect their streets to be clean? We used to clean our streets twice a year. Twice a month. Now we clean them once. Happened under the old mayor, and we never returned to it. The streets are filthy. The parks are don't have anybody in them. We have one of the highest crime rates in the United States. We are not bringing the murder rates down. It's an active crime scene in St. Louis at all times, but the only thing we can think of doing is just putting more money downtown, not even ever thinking that there has to be a different way to address this problem. We don't care. So I hope that the people who vote for Aldermen for the even don't care about who they vote in, or at least they do care, and they think it's time for a change. It really is time for a change as we continue to vote for this stuff. Billions of dollars in Zippo for North St. Louis. Makes no sense. And all this stuff about, well, the hotels are closed down. Well, the houses are closing down in North St. Louis. People are moving, leaving their houses, leaving them sitting there. It's not helping when you don't put any money in North St. Louis. It doesn't help the community. And you sitting here and thinking that the cancer is all right, long as it stays over there with those people, is a wrong thing. So when you talk about regionalism, and when you then don't have any concern except for certain parts of the city of St. Louis, you're not really talking about regionalism. You're talking about exclusion. You're talking about the same racism. You're talking about the same redlining. You're talking about the same attacks on education. That's why all our schools got closed down. This is a continuation. And we talk about Democrats. I see a Republican agenda that's just like anything that Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump, the Bush father and son. All we have is a Republican agenda down here that does not include looking out for one section of the town that really doesn't need the billions of dollars that you spent, that needs a portion of that spent in development, and not just low-income housing either, in economic development and redoing our schools and doing things that would be that would help grow our city all over. And the only time we ever look at North St. Louis if there's a part where all of a sudden the Caucasian people are moving into a city, that becomes, the old North St. Louis becomes important. Now the whole NGA West, that's important. But it's always adjacent to where Caucasian people live. And it's never important that we keep the traditions of black working and middle class that we have had for this city for many, many years. It is embarrassing that we sit down and do this over and over again. I want to ask for a roll call, and there is no necessity that we take this money and put it toward a convention center at the expense of the rest of our community.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. While I concur with my colleague from the 1st, 1,242 empty buildings, 1,700 vacant lots. I support this bill because of jobs. They've been using the bait of jobs for a very long time, fishing with the bait of jobs, saying that we're going to get jobs. We haven't received them yet. Like I said last week, I went down to the NGA. It was a whiteout. We don't have the jobs that they promised us. But I still have the hope and belief, and I am foolish enough to believe that a few jobs will come to my community, and that's what I'm looking forward to. And especially with the convention center with Kojic in their last 2 years, we need an enticement to get bigger venues to come to this city. So with that, I say, you know how I do with the pictures. Nothing has changed in my ward. Absolutely nothing. Don't make me pick the pictures up and throw my bricks at you, because it is horrible, deplorable condition in the 4th Ward, and we're living in squalor, and I am totally sick of downtown. Downtown is part of St. Louis, but we need to include the 4th Ward. We're living in third world conditions in the 4th Ward. But again, I am foolish enough to believe that we're going to get some jobs that we've never gotten so far with the promises. We're looking forward to getting jobs for people in the community, not just mediocre jobs, but great jobs, jobs where you can have a skill, carpenter, iron workers, bricklayers, all of that, but it's not happening. And I understand the frustration of the Alderwoman from the 1st, because I am burnt out with the promises that they make. But I, again, will support this because I'm foolish enough to believe that we're going to get 2-3 jobs out of the 2,000-3,000 that's going to be proposed for this project. So with that, I say, nothing has changed in the Fourth Ward. We're still waiting on relief, and it looks like it's gonna take God to change it because man won't do nothing for us. But when you're ready to take a tour of the Fourth Ward, you get tired of hearing me talking about it. I'm so glad that the woman from the first, I've been a little sick, but I'm okay. I'm here. And I still can take care of my people in the Fourth Ward. But we need help. We don't need no leader. We don't need no, how would I say, anyway, we need help.
Thank
in the
you.
Fourth Ward.
Thank you,
Thank
Alderman.
you very much.
Thank you. Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the Alderman from the 7th yield the question?
Alderman from the 7th will yield the question to the Alderman from the 24th.
Yes.
Alderman from the 24th, please proceed.
Thank you. I was at least one of the committee hearings for this bill, but I think I may have missed something. And I understand it's complicated, but can you explain, we're currently making a $6 million payment. We're going to extend that $6 million. Let's just make that the first question. We're going to extend that $6 million payment to what year?
Up to 40 years from the passage of this, which was at the
So
request.
2058,
Yes, I'll trust your math there. That sounds right.
2059.
Yeah.
Then this bill also creates an additional maintenance fund, which is above and beyond that $6 million payment.
So the maintenance fund already exists. We currently pay the maintenance fund on the convention center. So that's not a new obligation.
Okay. Do you know the amount that we're paying in that?
I believe it's still $2 million.
It's $2 million.
It's $2 million now, and it remains $2 million.
Well,
I don't know that it right now is pegged to CPI.
right. So that was my next question. So it is pegged to CPI, and the bill.
Yes.
The bill obligates us to do this for 40 more years. That $2 million is going to be like $12 million 40 years from now. Maybe not 12. Maybe 8 to 10.
It could be, yes.
So I'm a little concerned about that component, given that that'll be an increasing cost center every year. Can you, excuse me, but was there more than one committee hearing on this bill, or was there just one?
There were two scheduled. I guess for one of them, I don't believe that there was not a quorum. There was a presentation done, but there wasn't a quorum there. And then there was a hearing a couple weeks ago at Ways and Means. I think you were there for that.
Okay. I don't know if the preservation fund came up at either one, but I missed it. But maybe I was just not paying close enough attention. And then, so us issuing new bonds on this is contingent on St. Louis County issuing or authorizing bonds for an equivalent period of time, also for 40 years,
Correct.
also at $6 million a year.
Yes.
Do they make a payment into the maintenance fund also, or do we?
Yes, they do.
They do?
Yes.
Is it the same as our payment?
Yeah, it's $2 million. And just so you know, their legislation has not been sent down yet, but yeah, it mirrors this basically.
And this only applies if the county acts. Is that in the bill, or is that just an understanding with the?
That's in the bill. I don't actually have, I could point you to the language, but it is in both our bill and the county bill language explicitly stating that they're contingent on each other.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I guess, I suppose I have a small concern about that preservation fund and the escalation in that fund in coming years. I do think on the flip side that an investment from St. Louis County taxpayers that amounts to well over $100 million in downtown St. Louis over the period of time of this bill is something that is hard to turn down. And the employment data that the CVC tracks and collects is pretty compelling, actually, on how many city and county residents work either directly at the convention center or in associated industries. So I appreciate the Alderman from the 7th clarifying some of those questions. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I initially voted yes on this board bill. I also have sat down with the director of the convention center earlier last year and understand the need for us to have tourism within the city. On the flip side of that, I do think that it's important that we start looking at the city as a whole. From what I see, and I want to just get clarification of if Alderman from the 7th will yield for questioning.
Alderman from the 7th will yield the question to the Alderman from the 3rd.
Certainly.
Alderman from the 3rd, please proceed.
So this is $105 million in 40 years that be invested into the convention center, correct?
Yeah, we'd be borrowing around $105 million, depending on market conditions. The actual cost for us is more like, in real dollars, like 80-something million. It's half of 175, whatever that is.
Okay, but so we'll be paying back that additional, or is the rest of that coming from the county?
You got to borrow, so you have to pay interest on it, yes. So that's why the amount you borrow is higher than the amount you get in real dollars. And I would note that, you know, this was vetted very carefully by the comptroller and her financial advisors, and they both agree with the projections and believe we can responsibly borrow this money.
Understood. Well, I would certainly think that we can responsibly borrow it. Once again, the concern, just like the Alderwoman from the 1st, is the reasoning that we're borrowing for and where we are investing. Of course, we need the investment, and it's an important investment. But with that, in 40 years, I'll be 71 years old. I can hardly see myself going to the convention center, or I can't even fathom the type of events that would be taking place there in 40 years. People could be riding around on hoverboards playing football. I don't know. The majority of us in 40 years will either be dead or too old to benefit from, I think, the actions that were taking place right now. And in 40 years, just like I'm 31 right now, over the last 10 or 15 years, I've seen a lot of disinvestment happen, on the north side. And I think with that, it has kind of put our city where it is now, where we have this dwindling population, and we're not looking at the city as a whole. We are continually only investing in those places that are already thriving. And this is no ill will towards you, Alderman from the 7th, but as a city, and I think with all of the different individuals who are involved in making this city run, we have to start making changes at the very beginning when we have the opportunity to. And I think this is an opportunity for us to redirect some of these funds and start looking at our city as a whole and start making better plans and better decisions. 40 years is an extremely long time. Number one, for whatever reason or however we could do it to make it fiscally work, for me to support this, I'd at least want to see this cut down in half. Now, that may not be possible, regardless whether it is or not. We don't have any dollars coming to the north side of St. Louis opposed to, other than our capital improvement funds. And the issues that exist are starting to exist on the south and the central west end are coming from the north side of St. Louis. And if we don't start looking at what we're going to do collectively as a board and start making sure that we're looking out for the entire city of St. Louis, then we'll continue to have these issues that we have, that we run from every single year. We're not talking about crime seriously. We have questions, we have conversations about it, but actually taking actions from my perspective, well, we have now, but putting real physical dollars behind that, getting ahead of that, is important. And I think these communities that are in disarray need to be invested into so we can start being ahead of these issues. Do you know how many minorities that they have working in the convention center that are making over $50,000 a year?
Over what number?
50,000.
50,000? I can't speak to that. I can give you some employment numbers generally about the convention center and the surrounding businesses, but I don't know how many are making over 50,000.
Do you know how many of them are in on the management level, or how many of them are actually managing employees?
I do not.
Okay, so they always are promising jobs, and when I go to the convention center, I usually see people that look like me being ushers. I usually see people that look like me not sitting in offices where everybody else are who are making the big bucks, right?
I'd respectfully disagree with your assertion there. I don't know when the last time you went over and visited with Kitty and her team, but I'd say she's got a pretty diverse team of employees, not just at the concession level, but in her front office.
Well, that would be awesome to know with the questions I just asked. So that's
And
the reason
I
I'm
would
asking
point
questions.
out you've also been invited over there on multiple occasions. I don't know if you've taken advantage of that
I have.
opportunity. Okay.
Yeah, I've been. But I just met Katie, and I think one other individual, I don't remember her name. But, you know, those are things I think that we need to disclose to the public because I don't know, which is the reason why I'm asking the question to you. I would like to know how many people we have that are black that are actually making, you know, substantial amount of money since we are making these investments. And we are talking about jobs. I want to make sure that people are being able to have a career within that facility and not just coming there to work and skipping from there to the Cardinals baseball stadium and then going over to the Savage Center just being ushers, once again working concessions. I don't have that information. And of course, I could say that's on me because I could have looked that up or tried to get that information from Katie a while back. But we are here now, and I'm asking you because you are the sponsor of the bill. That is another thing that I would like to say. I definitely want to see more of us working on the upper management level if we aren't already there. You know, I just agree with the Alderwoman from the first on us kind of really looking at what we can do to start putting dollars in other places. This is a substantial amount of money to me. And, you know, once again, we never see this amount of investment at all from my perspective going into our sides of town. Yeah, we have different, you know, parts that are doing better than others, but the north side as a whole, the people on the north side will tell you they feel like that they are not getting any attention. And this is, you know, one of the reasons. You see millions of dollars going into downtown all the time, which we need because we need people to visit downtown, and that's one of the things that keeps our city sustainable is our tourism. But we also need to look at how do we retain residents? How do we get people to come in and tour and buy a house afterwards? Because people come in, tour, spend money, leave back out, and they never come back to the city except for when there's an event or something that they like to indulge in that the city has to offer. We need to start looking at residency. What do we have when people come and tour for them to tour aside from downtown? You know, when you go a mile from downtown and you go to the Third Ward, or you find yourself in other parts of the north side, which is a hop, skip, and a jump from the arch, it doesn't look like downtown. It doesn't look like Yorkina Plaza. It doesn't look like the City Garden. And I don't think that's, you know, only lack of, I don't think that's lack of leadership from all the people. I think that's lack of plan and ownership from the city saying that we need to take different directions in the way that we invest in our city.
Everyone, please hold it down. Alderman from the 3rd, please proceed.
I'm in support of us fixing our convention center and improving it. But I'm not in support of us spending all of these funds continually downtown and us not even having a precise plan collectively that we all know, have seen and read and said this is the direction we're going in aside from downtown. After this project is over, this is where we're going. We got a major league stadium coming, and it's not on them. These are, you know, private ownerships, but us as a city still, we need to be looking at what is our plan. We can ask every single alder person in the room, what is the plan for the entire city? Right now, we all will have different answers. You know, there is no collective idea of where we are taking this city. And we all are fighting in our own little area to get the most that we can for the people that we represent, and not the entire city as a whole. And I think that's what we will continue to lose if we don't start to look at, when we have the time or when we have the opportunity for funds being released, how can we reinvest? How can we match areas in terms of the way they look on this side to that side? How do we make all of the sins of how do we make all of the ends of the city meet in the middle? With that, I will sit down unless somebody says something that makes me stand back up. But I want to make sure, and it's another thing, right? We spend all this money down here, and we only getting 26 to 30% black contractors. That's an issue for me. I mean, when I say that's a heck of an issue, why are we in a 51% black city and we only asking for 30% black contracts? I don't see black contractors becoming millionaires on a regular basis. I see them making a few $100,000, and they can't even sustain because you have to spend a whole lot of money when you get these contracts first out, and wait for that money to come back. I mean, we're not doing the best that we can to make sure that everybody in the city has equal opportunities to be able to rise at the same time. There's $105 million. Like, I don't see any way where we'll have one black millionaire come out of this, right? One minority coming. I don't care if it's Asian, Latina, no matter what it is. Like, I don't see where we are making sure that there are opportunities other than trying. We make an effort. Yeah, we make a small effort, but making it, actualizing it, we don't have a bunch of black contractors running around here with the ability, and we have the ability to create that. We have the ability to create the opportunity for sustainment for contractors that are minorities, and we just make sure that we are continually putting money in the pockets of people who are already doing well. And we will continue to fail as a city because that people will continually get robbed. You'll have these tourists come down here, they will get robbed, period, because we're not looking out for those people on the other side of town, right? These things have to change, and we have to start looking at what we're doing, the decisions that we're making today. I don't want to be 30 years down the line talking about the same thing. Oh, we robbing and stealing still. Oh, we need to figure out how to stop people from breaking in the windows downtown because that's running away tourists. Don't park your car here because it's going to get broken into. Oh, you can't come out here, at 2 o'clock in the morning because you might get robbed. Watch yourself when you're in St. Louis. Hide your purse, hide your kids. Those things have to change. I don't want to be in this position 30 years from now, or have been in this position in 30 years from now and could have created real change. All of us could have created real change, and we still have the same systemic issues that existed when we all were in our teenage years. Those things should not continue, and that's just, that is on all of us if we are still sitting here and our children grow up with the same issues that we have right now. We all been talking about disinvestment. I've been hearing since I was a kid, we ain't got no money. City ain't got this, the city ain't got that. We don't have the time, or we don't have the resources to invest in the north side. I don't care what nobody got to say. When you got kids running around in the neighborhood at 2 o'clock in the morning and there is nobody following them, we as a city are failing, period, point blank. When you got so many homicides, that's all the news comes out for. You can ask them to come to positive events. We just had like 4 Christmas parties. I didn't see any news people there. I saw our own people there, channel STL TV, which we appreciate, but we invite people out. We invite people out to try to change the narrative in our city, and they don't come out because we're continually doing the same thing that we've been doing for 30 years, which is just leaving our city, north side, our black and our minority population disinvested into. Thank you.
Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I rise to support this board bill, but I also support some of the things that the alderman said from the 3rd Ward. He is extremely passionate and really, really understands the plight of North St. Louis. The unfortunate part about all of this is that we have not been a collective force to improve North St. Louis. It is not upon us to stop ourselves from having an opportunity to have more investment and then have more jobs available to those who are in North St. Louis. But it is important for us to change how we plan for the future. You see, if you don't forecast and you don't expend certain funds to have more money later on, you'll never get ahead. And finally, this is one of those decisions. So you see the $250 million that's been generated by our small convention population at this moment means a lot to the business owners, to those who have jobs there, and to our city coffers. So if you would like to make that a smaller amount, then we can do that. But I'd rather use the $6 million that I already have invested, reinvest it, and then double that amount of money. Because you see, we are losing the larger conventions right now. I've been over there in meetings for the last year and a half, and they have turned down all the 40,000, 50, and 60,000 person conventions. And so when you have conventions like that come to your city, they could leave as much as, for one convention, $75 million. Do you know what that would mean to the economy of this city for one convention? Nevertheless, if you got 2 or 3 a year. So we got to plan for the future. And the only way we can do that is by those small things that we can control, that can move forward in a fast pace, because we don't have, like he said, 40 years to make this work, to turn it around. We're already 10 or 15 years behind. So we got to make some smart decisions now. But going back to his passion, which I truly understand, is we need to be a collective force to make sure that the funds are going to the right place to help the right people and that they get jobs. End of story. Now, you may not be aware of this, but we dealt with the minority participation for contractors and buying any kind of materials or anything for the convention center. I don't know if Brother Shahid is still here, but Brother Shahid and others, oh, they put a hurting on that whole situation, and we all backed them up. Those who were aldermen at that time, and those of us who were out as civic leaders in the community. And that whole thing is under control now. The management over there, 50% of the management is black women. I don't know if you got a chance to meet any of them lately, but it is. And those who are in the trades, the electricians and all those guys, over 50% of them, whether they're women, men, or other nationalities, the numbers are very, very good. And so what we want to do is to make sure more people get those opportunities. Now, those jobs are not what we call minimum wage jobs, okay? Because you have to be skilled to do the things there. Even the people who work part-time, and that's a ton of our senior citizens, so they hire people to work events and all those things as well. And so we don't want them to lose their income either. If you shut it down and do nothing, then we're going to lose a lot of money. But what we got to do is we got to get this body and that room across the hall on a path of working together to determine better outcomes. I'm with you 900%. I got to say that other 100% for 19th Ward. So I got 1,000% I want to invest in all of this, okay? So we can do it. I know we can do it. And I agree with all those things you said needed to be done. But it is so important that we move forward with investment for the future. Because your city will just start, it is crumbling. You saw it when you walked over there. It's stuff leaking, falling apart, missing, garage, raggedy, all kinds of stuff. And so we will lose some of those conventions that we're already getting. But that's just one little small piece of the pie. I don't want you to think that that's going to change the world. It's just a small piece of the pie that we're going to be looking at to move forward and do better. But I agree with you on the other things that you said. And you know I've shared this with you privately. We do need to do better. Thank you.
Alderman from the 21st.
President, I will yield to the Alderman from the 3rd if he has a response.
Alderman from the 3rd.
Yes, I would just like to say I appreciate that, and I certainly agree with you. So from my understanding, if we don't pass this, the convention center as it stands will still have the same employees as it has. It will still operate. It will still operate with the leaky roof or whatever's going on with it. Those people are still, people are still getting paid to work there every day. So, I can't see it shutting down, and I definitely wouldn't like it to shut down at all. I don't want to take anybody's job at all, under no circumstances. I want to make sure there's equal opportunity and the city's been equitable when it's creating jobs, number one, and when it's investing in general. Like, a lot of our areas in the north side, you can say some of the north side is kind of downtown. Like you could say that it's down, it's the north side, but it's like downtown. You can go straight down Tucker, and I mean literally, you'll go from like this amazing place into ruins on one street in less than a mile. That's downtown. I can go to my house and go on my roof and see the arch, I can see the Lumiere, and everybody in my neighborhood can. That's part of downtown. When you go to Atlanta and you go 3 or 4 miles on the highway and in other cities, that's 3 or 4 miles of actual downtown. We ourselves don't consider the north downtown because we've separated it because of how it looks. That is the reason why downtown don't have north side a part of it, and people try to separate it, but it's all together. When you can drive one street and never, ever make a left or a right and go from beautification to deterioration, that's an issue. In less than a mile. That is one big problem that we all are just turning a blind eye on constantly, but then speaking about. When it comes in terms of us saying we need to work together and work with these offices, when is that going to happen? It's been 18 years or better. That people been in this board for as long as I've been alive. And I can go back and research, things that have been said, and we'll be talking the same things today that was talked about 30 years ago. So where's the communication change, right? Where's that paradigm shift? Where's the shift? When is it going to come into fruition that we are working together and we finally have these plans and we done figured it out, right? From my experience and understanding, people only get serious when you bring money to the table. People start to listen when you talk about taking money or giving money or holding money. This is that time where we're talking about money. We're talking about $105 million worth of money. It's a whole lot of money to somebody. And that's enough to get anybody to come to the table who's serious about this $105 million. I just think, once again, at this particular time, with all of the decisions that we are making, all the monies that we are investing, we should have a plan at best, at bare minimum, before passing all these board bills, so the general public can know, yeah, we might be putting $105 million here and another $100 million into downtown, then another $43 million in an MLS stadium, but this is the plan on how it's all going to connect. This is where the end game is. This is how that Tucker Street is going to go from this to that. These are what the visuals look like. It don't cost us $1 billion to get architectural drawings, right? But we aren't making sure that the resources are going there so people can at least have hope. We don't have a 10-year plan. Right now, the kids that are 10 years old right now are looking at me and the other people on the north side to do something about the visuals that they see every day. They're looking at us to find development. I got to go and figure out who got $10 million to put into one of these schools. And hopefully the people don't come and steal the copper and the water heaters out as soon as they put them in there. Because I got to figure out how to make sure those same individuals that's stealing got a job. Then I got to figure out why these individuals started stealing or why they can't get a job. All of those things trickle down to what we are doing in our city and what we are putting into and investing into to make sure that people in this city have a real future. We're investing in what exists right now. We are focused on sustaining our city and not building our city. All of these schools are falling apart, but yet we tax evade like they're not. And then we don't make sure that when they're falling apart, we come together as a board to find money to fix them. We don't come together as a board to force the school board to do better. We know that these kids aren't getting adequate education. Half of us know that you're in the 3rd grade reading at a 1st grade level. But it's all right. The binders are falling off the books. We're in a digital age. Every single child should walk in school with an iPad, but yet they sharing them in the computer class. You can't touch it until it's computer day. That's ridiculous. Computers are $100. Yet our students aren't receiving adequate education. So yes, they grow up and they steal. They grow up and they find anything that they can do that we are showing them that it's the correct way. They do the opposite of that, because what we consider correct isn't bringing them what they need, which is real quality of life and advancing individuals within the city. Like we are dwindling in population, but nobody's talking about what we are going to do to get that change, right? We're talking about convention and tourism. We're going to put $105 million into a building, and we can barely advertise the building. They're supposed to be advertising the city. That's what convention and tourism is. When the last time you seen a commercial on TV about coming to St. Louis? This is this happy place. You need to be here because why? We just spent $10 million or more on the arch, and I ain't seen one commercial about it. Where's Ms. Ratcliffe? Where are the individuals who are making sure that the visuals about the city, the investments that we are making, the people are even seeing for the tourists to come down? We're just banking on the events that come and the people who are promoting these events to say, hey, this event is coming to the city, you should come, right? We should be all around this city highlighting the amazing things that this city has to offer, opposed to putting $105 million into one building saying that this building needs it and people will come if you build it. That's false. People will not come if you build it. People are leaving here while we're building. That's a problem. We're still not looking at what we need to do to advertise our city when we put $105 million into one of these facilities. How people are going to know that we just reinvented this facility? Just like they don't know we just reinvented the arch, except for the few who are interested in coming to the city to see the arch. That's ridiculous, and we have the opportunity as a board, every single one of us right now, this exact moment, to make differences within our city for the future. So 40 years from now, we're not talking about the same thing, kicking ourselves in the butt saying we could have made a different decision. Not on this, not just on the convention center, but on all of the different things that we have going on within this city right now, that we are not making sure that we are tying our investments together. How does this tie into the $343 or $63 million stadium that could possibly be built? Have we talked to them about that? Have we conversated or had any conversations as a board on how we're going to make sure that we advertise all of this? Like, all of these things are important when we're talking about investing into one particular facility and saying that the money gonna bounce back. That's false. It don't work like that. And everybody who does business and knows business, no, you're just not going to dump money into something and think that it's going to come back. I have not seen anything in our city that says that we are working hard to change the view of our city to where we can add more tourism to our numbers, to where we can, what is going to add 100 or 200 or 300,000 new people to the city just putting $105 million into the convention center? Do we have any contracts lined up that said, hey, if you fix this facility, we're going to come and bring 100,000 people here every single year? We don't have no commitments. We don't have any commitments other than the fact that we're saying that we need to do this because it needs to be done. And that's not the way we move cities forward. That's not the way you think innovatively. We're not thinking innovatively. We're thinking about sustainability, and that only lasts for a small amount of time. We will continue to sustain, and whoever our next mayor is or the mayor after that will be left to deal with our money problems, our disinvestment, our issues of having lack of cooperative economics, and us looking at how are we going to bring this entire city together. You got all of this money flowing, all of this money going around, but nobody's connecting the dots. And all of these beautiful minds working all of these positions within the city that's supposed to be moving our city forward. But yet we're spending. We're just spending and we're just spending, and we're hoping and we're hoping and we're hoping that the city turns around. We got a $1.1 billion budget, the same amount that we had last year or the year before. We like the exact same amount, but we still are losing hundreds of thousands of residents. I mean, this is ridiculous. We don't know what that census is going to be when we come out. But we need to be looking at retention. We need to be trying to figure out what this city looks like adding 100,000 new people to it, not asking 100,000 new people to visit. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from First.
The Alderman from the...
I don't know that he's... Yeah.
Okay. Mr. President, members of the board, I want to say to the Alderman from the 3rd that the reason that, and I talked about this last... I don't need you to yell. I just want to talk about, I talked about this last week. Yeah, they want 40 years. The reason why they like 40 years is because, like you said, in 40 years, you'll be 70-something years old. They do these long-term things because they don't anticipate anybody who can remember what they said would still be at this Board of Aldermen. I stand here as the longest-serving person who lives in North St. Louis, north of Delmar. Okay, I stand here, and I remember all the promises that they make that now they're breaking right here. This is a bill that they're breaking. Oh, we got to do this. We're always got to do something for downtown, okay? We have to do it because, ooh, the convention center, we want to improve it, or we're going to lose conventions. I'm okay with losing some conventions and having smaller conventions. If we take that money that we have right now, if we put this same package and said, this is what we're going to put for these 11 wards that's in North St. Louis, okay? Think of the investment that we could have all over our community if they said, we have not put any money in, and so we're going to take this money, because the $105 million is the initial bond, but it does have to be paid back. And it has to be paid back in a way that we already know that with the football team leaving, we're paying the entire $6 million. They forecast to us that we would make enough money off of the stadium that we wouldn't have to do that. I didn't believe that then, and it turned out not to be true, okay? Now we're adding, talking about putting another $2 million for maintenance, okay? Well, what about the $2 million for maintenance in North St. Louis, okay? What about the $2 million for maintenance at Fairground Park? Fairground Park, which would be beautiful like Forest Park, but it's not. Okay, I actually travel all over this city. I have lived in all parts of the city. I lived in the Central West End, right around from where the current mayor lives now. I lived in South St. Louis for 8 years, and then I came and I've lived for 32 years in North St. Louis. I was dumbfounded when I moved to North St. Louis after living in South St. Louis for so long, because when I moved there in 1986, and my husband's family is from there, I was so spoiled and used to things in South St. Louis. I was used to running to the Nationals, or to the Snooks, or to the mini Walgreens, or to all of the Pennies. Famous Bar was still at South Kings Highway. Everything, the Ventures, the Target. You're so spoiled and you get so used to it that you don't even have a clue that there are people who live someplace else who have absolutely nothing. So when I came, I was just like, okay, I'm here, and I kind of knew about it, but I didn't. I just visited my in-laws, so I wasn't having to do my shopping and stuff. And once I moved there and started to try to shop and to do my business, it just almost petrified me, which is why I ended up at the Board of Aldermen, okay? With I can show you my original material when I ran, talking about that there was a middle class and working class black St. Louis that was in North St. Louis that has always been there, and that I wanted to bring a grocery store, which I did. I wanted a Walgreens, which I did. We're working on a hardware store. But the thing of it is, we were doing $50 million worth of stuff. And so this Board of Aldermen took the ward that was thriving, and this is what they thought about it. Let's tear this up. And nothing else happened, okay? Let's take the money. We had $500,000 when I left that was supposed to go toward the planning and the improvement of Natural Bridge. That money is poof. When they tore up the ward, it's gone, okay? And then look at what I'm talking about. I'm talking about $500,000. They're talking about $105 million. Plus, when you talk about when you pay it back, you're talking about $300. So don't say 105. Let's talk about 8 times 4, $332 million potentially, okay? So. And they're saying, well, we got to do that because the convention center is looking kind of bad. Can you go on your own street and look at houses that are looking kind of bad? You know I understand Hyde Park. I've been down there. I put my own money in there. My husband and I, we believed in it. So when the city didn't believe in it, we believed in it, okay? So when you drive around your community, I came over there the other day and I drove around. And so I look at Hyde Park was supposed to be Lafayette Square. And I've been down in Hyde Park since 1979, okay? That was the Lafayette Square. No, okay? So all of these promises are just that. And the reason why is because we don't like ourselves, so we go along with saying, we hope, and we're going to believe in it. I want to say to my friend from the 4th, and I love you, sweetie, but I've been raised that if you repeat something over and over again and expect a different outcome and you're getting the same outcome, that's not right, okay? I want to say it's crazy, okay? So these jobs that they talk about, when I came back here in 2013, I sat on HUD's because you were not feeling well, and so I took your place for a while on HUD's. And I got to question the people as we came back, and we had to give more money to the hotels. And the person who came had been the person who had been with me saying that the hotel was a giant waste of money, the Renaissance. When he came, I said, remember when we were working together and we said that the hotel was going to go under? He said, yes, and it did. It went bankrupt. But he said, it's already built down, and now we got to do this. And now we have to do this. And then he started talking about the jobs. And Alderman of the 21st at that time was Alderman French. Alderman of the 27th was Alderman Carter. And so I told him, watch this, I'm going to show you when they talk about jobs. So they brought all this busload of black people in to make us shame us. Look at all these black people working. Then we started saying, okay, where you live? That's what I started asking each one of them. Illinois, South St. Louis, St. Louis County. They had one person from North St. Louis working that they brought. After a while, they told us, that's all right, we don't want our people to testify anymore, okay? Because that whole thing about jobs, yes, I want black people, but I want black people in North St. Louis to be employed also. So when you even employ black people, you can't find any, even in North St. Louis, to be the maids, janitors, and things like that. So they didn't come from there. I've watched this over and over and over and over again, year after year after year. So when I hear about this promise of what we have to do or what we will lose, what you're saying to me is we will save the convention center and we do not care if you continue to bleed in North St. Louis. Then when it comes time for redistricting, then we'll say, well, see, you guys have lost all the people. Yeah, because you know what people do? They get up and leave because they don't see anything happening. And then the only thing they want to build in North St. Louis is low to mod income rental property. We have places where people have owned their properties for decades and decades. And that's kind of hard in the black community because for years, you couldn't own property in certain places. The whole Shelley v. Kramer was because the people moved up into the 4600 block of Labadie in the 4th Ward, and the white people came and said, hey, black people, you can't live here. And they said, well, we already bought this. So for black people to have owned property for decades, that was very hard. We act like we don't have a history and that we're just looking at that rosy future. The future's not been rosy for us. They don't keep their word. So you have to look at the past to say, if there's supposed to be such a rosy future, let's look at what your promises are. And then let's look at see what you've done. Let's look at the football bill that we put together. Why are now we saying when that payment runs out, because mind you, we are making the payment right now where we don't have a football team. And when this bill starts up, it's when we pay the last note on the football team. Okay, and then they say, okay, now you're paying this $6 million off here, so now we're going to pick up and start all over. We're going to keep this money and put it over here. And we still don't have a plan for what we're going to do, any large-term monies for North St. Louis, okay? And we're not going to. And then in 40 years, none of us are going to be sitting here. Maybe Alderman from the 3rd might be here, because his father, he might, but most, we're not going to be here, okay? And so you have to look at, and this is the thing, all you have to do is demand, show us where you have done something for North St. Louis. Where's the $100 million, the $200 million? And don't tell me NGA West, where you're just moving jobs from one site to the other one. Show us where you have done it. You won't be able to. Show us the time you spend on planning for North St. Louis, because they're supposed to be planning from a hardware store, but they put it down every time, and then they're like, oh, well, we need you to drive around. I don't need to drive around with Stephen Conway. You know where the land is. You know it's supposed to got done a long time ago. I don't need to drive around. I need you to get it done, Otis Williams and Planning Committee and Planning Community. Why isn't it done? I was gone. It should have got done while I was gone for 10 years. Why am I back here 20-something years later still talking about a hardware store for North St. Louis? I remember how proud I was when they built the Home Depot down in South St. Louis. I was a new alderperson. Geraldine Osborne worked really well with the South St. Louis aldermen, and they got it. And for years, I would drive down there because I was just so proud that we had a hardware store after Central Hardware closed in the city. But the next thing was supposed to happen is we were supposed to get one north too. People own houses. We can't fix anything up. We can't do anything. The only thing we can get is fast food, gas stations, liquor stores. People who don't live in our community, oh, they push that in zoning. Zoning will push that there because they don't live there. And I am so sick and tired of hearing that the comptroller is for it. Now, the comptroller lives on the edge of North St. Louis, but she really lives in the part that they have now designated as the new part of the Central West End. Now, the comptroller is going to tell us if it's a good deal financially. She doesn't tell us if it's a good deal for North St. Louis. She can say, well, can we do this financially? How the bond's going to be. But is this a good deal for North St. Louis? Would she agree to this and say, we're going to take your money away from your neighborhoods? No, because with the neighborhood she lives in, they're putting millions and millions of dollars into it. So of course she thinks that's a good idea because she don't live there. But I live north of Delmar on purpose. I didn't accidentally move there. When we bought our house, I could have bought a house in the 50-100 block of Washington. We knew the difference in what the cost was going to be. We knew that even though we put money in there, my husband grew up in his neighborhood and he's third generation, and I wanted to dream the dream and drink the Kool-Aid with him and believe that the city would be fair. This city is not fair. This current mayor is following the same thing that the previous mayor, and she got a board of aldermen that goes along with everything and rubber stamps it at the expense of a community, and then you blame us. Do not blame the alderman. This is the mayor doing this stuff. It's us if we vote for this. Them jobs that they talking about are not. I've been over to visit Kitty on many chances. Before there was a Kitty, I was over at the convention center. So I've dealt with Bruce Summer. So I remember people before Kitty. I've been over there. No, the convention center is not perfect, but I do believe Koji went back to Memphis, which is smaller than what we have right now, I want to say Alderman. So coming back to the city of St. Louis, still to me would be better than Memphis, which has a smaller site, okay? So, and I'm not even opposed to if the convention center said, well, hey, can we have part of the money? But some of the money, and that's what I had proposed to Kitty. Don't try to go get the whole $6 million, never thinking you were gonna say for 6 plus 2, $8 million. But we got so many things we need in our community, then don't say, okay, I'm going to take all of the money, and the mayor's pushing that at the expense of one part of North St. Louis. That's how come people don't vote for you over there, because they know you didn't care, the former alderman didn't care. People don't care about North St. Louis, and if we don't care about North St. Louis, shame on us. That's why I say vote us out. We cannot continue to do this. I am the 25 years later. When we talk about stuff, we talk about the arch, we talk about the stadium, we talk about all this stuff, and they tell us what we are going to do. How can you have $400 million for an arch? Going to be about close to $400 million for soccer, $100 million for a hockey team. Hockey team in our building don't pay anything. The whole deal was they were going to pay to fix the place up. We had SLDC go behind our back, LCRA I think it was, change the terms of the lease and make it something different than our original lease, and now they're not even paying one dime. Who does that? If you're a landlord, you do sometimes let people move into your property, but you make them build out and fix up. But here we have, let somebody move in, then we got some non-elected officials that are appointed by the mayor, go and change our contract, and now we vote to give them $63 million more to fix up a place where they don't even pay any rent, and they're not paying any taxes. So they have perpetual tax abatement. When we do all of this, we are saying to a portion of the city, you do not matter. The convention center will continue to go on. The jobs, good. If they got good jobs, they should. But here's my thing. I dare them to come and present those facts. I met with Kitty. She didn't present them, okay? I can read as well as anybody else. I heard what the alderwoman from the 19th said, but I've met with her. Not one of those things that she said, if you had them, when I was asking all those questions, that was the time to say, here, Alderwoman Tyus. And then when you do it, though, don't do it on the floor where I can't go behind you and challenge you, because then I'm going to go over there and check it out. Now, what I know about the convention center is that one of my good friends used to have the food contract for when the football stadium was here. And this is what they did. This is how they do it. And he's been friends with my husband for a long time. So then they came and offered my husband the coffee deal there. I said, not no, but hell no. They were like, well, why? Because it's not going to be a conflict of interest with Sharon Tyus and Sterling Miller. No, thank you, okay? So that's what they do. They can offer you stuff, okay? And then we're like, I'm supposed to be so happy. Oh, we got a coffee contract. No, I want to see the millions and millions of dollars that they've put downtown, Central Quarter, some parts of the 6th Ward, 8th Ward, all those money. I want to see that over in North St. Louis. If you don't fix up that convention center and it stays just the way it is, leaky, it cannot be as bad as living next door to houses that are falling down, and you're living next to them, and you actually are scared that the house is going to fall on you. It cannot be as bad as you're calling yourself a middle-class person who paid your taxes, and then you have to drive around and the grass is up to your knees because the city does not cut grass. And the city is breaking its own laws. And the city is saying we don't have enough money to hire people to cut grass, which all studies have indicated when you cut grass and tear down vacant buildings that decreases crime in the area. But what you're doing is you are purposefully deciding that a side of town does not exist or you don't care. And that is a plan. And that plan is called the Team 4 plan. And they said it very clearly about not giving us services, not giving us money, not picking up trash, not tearing down buildings. You can read all about it. And then people can deny it all they want to, but it's ongoing today. That is the plan. So when you come here, I'm the 25 years later, and you say it's...
Please proceed, Alderman.
When you come back here 25 years later and you say to me, yeah, we told you that, but see, what happened is, I'm not listening to you. Okay, we built a Metrolink. I sat here and they went across North St. Louis over to the Central Quarter and said, we'll be back. But see what happened is now, when I came back, and I started asking about it, the former mayor tweeted and said, well, she's right, we did say that. But guess what they want to do now? Now they want to take the Metrolink and bring it from downtown up to NGA. Not bring it from where they have promised all this time, which was from UMSL down Natural Bridge and connect. Because they got a new toy, NGA, close to downtown. Because Alderman is right. There is a part of North St. Louis that's close to downtown, and you don't have to drive a mile. As soon as you pass that gas station, and you fall off the end of the earth. Now, how can that be? You pass a gas station that's on the same street that we are the city hall, okay? As soon as you pass that, and I don't want to give them any publicity because they shouldn't be in our communities at all, but as soon as you pass that one gas station, you're still downtown. You fall off the ends of the earth, and everybody say, well, that's what's wrong with those black aldermen. They don't do it. We are not in charge of all of this. The only thing we should be doing is vote no on all of their stuff. I don't trust Otis Williams to look out for North St. Louis because Otis Williams does not live in North St. Louis. I was entrusted to look out. So if I can't do anything but bring these issues up over and over again and keep talking about them, I'm not going to keep hope alive anymore. Because I did have hope alive when I voted for the Metrolink. And now I know they're a bunch of liars, okay? I did have hope alive. I didn't vote for the football stadium, but and everything I thought was going to happen did happen. Now, the alderman from the 7th said last week who would vote for that. Well, we have some people here who did vote for that, still here. I wasn't one of them, but there were people that voted for that. Why did they vote for that? Because maybe they had hope, okay? And maybe they don't live in North St.Louis, so they don't have to look at the despair. If you do not have to look at the despair of what happens, you can live in your own little world with blinders. I used to come downtown, down Natural Bridge. I would complain so profusely that I was told, why don't you go a different way? So I started coming down Kings Highway and getting on 40. A very, very different route. A very different route. We are all the same city. We keep saying about we want to have the same thing, but we're not willing to make any decisions that's in the best interest of North St. Louis. We continue to make decisions that says downtown, we got to keep building downtown up. When I got down here, there was not, in 91, there was not a downtown neighborhood to speak of. It was a few mansion house and other things. All of that stuff that has happened along Washington was not there, but we put tens and millions of dollars and millions of dollars, and because we got to build up downtown. Why do we have to build up downtown? Let's ask that question. What is the point of building up downtown? And the answer is very simple. This city is an African-American city. They are losing white population in South St. Louis. They did when they tore up the 20th Ward. They brought in 30,000 Bosnians. And so their whole thought is to build up the Central Quarter and downtown and make it as white as possible so that we do not be overrun by black leadership. It's not working, people. Look around you and see. It's still not working. We should not be declaring that a part of the city does not exist and should not be developed. And we are, and I'm saying we who live in North St. Louis, if we put our stamp of approval on this and say this okay, then it's shame on us. I understand you talking about those jobs, Alderman from the 4th. They just don't happen. They will be minimal or minuscule, okay? They do not compare to if they would put $10 billion in your ward and put it to work, okay, and developing things. Put $10 billion over in the first ward, what's really the 20th ward, then you wouldn't even hear me anymore. I'd be over there building hardware stores and stores. Put $10 billion. I ain't talking about $100 billion. You know, put the money that you were putting every place else. Take that block grant money that now is minuscule. Bring it back. The ones that 15 times the city has had to pay money back that I know of from block grant money because they spent it illegally in downtown in the central quarter when it could have been spent where it's supposed to. 15 times. Major money. They misused money at the Chase Park Plaza that was supposed to be, they redid the Chase Park Plaza as apartments. As soon as they finished, they said, we're not gonna make those apartments. This is gonna be a hotel. They misused the money. You go to jail about doing that kind of stuff. But nobody, and somebody did go to jail. It wasn't about the Chase, but some other things. You have to stop believing and drinking the Kool-Aid. That's what happened at Jim Jones, okay? What happened in Jim Jones is they drank that Kool-Aid and we believed. I'm not drinking any more Kool-Aid. The Metrolink was enough for me. Now they're trying all the ways that they can to try to convince me that they don't want to keep their promise that they made to me all those many years ago, that if I would vote for it, this is what they would do. And they want to tell me about fast buses. They want to tell me about this and that. But you said if I vote for Metrolink, that you would come back and we would have Metrolink down Natural Bridge. And I traveled to San Diego. I traveled all over looking at above ground because, of course, everything was below ground. And I was like, well, why you want to put ours above ground? But I got educated. I went to San Diego, which has the most beautiful Martin Luther King there is, and they have an above ground Metrolink that will take you to Mexico. And so then I was convinced this would work down Natural Bridge, and it would build up our Natural Bridge, and we would have commerce the way that they do on Chippewa. And so here I am, 20-some years later. They're not even thinking about doing it. They're trying to figure out how they can do something different. And I want to say to South St. Louis, there's a place near and dear to my heart about South St. Louis because I lived there for 7 years. And so I know how to go to South County, down Morganforth. Like I said, I was sad when the JCPenney's closed, and I spoke to it on the floor because I shopped at the JCPenney's. I shopped at the Target before they built the double-decker Target. I remember when there used to be a White Castles at the corner, and they tore that down. So the famous bar, taking the clock down with the famous bar hurt my heart because I still have things in my house that I got from that famous bar. So I have love for the whole city. I still go to Straub's because when I first moved here, that's where I shopped. And I had a kind of a heartbeat when Whole Foods came because I did not want Straub's to be put out of business. And then with Amazon buying Whole Foods, even though I like Whole Foods, I don't go to that one because I go to Straub's out of loyalty that I want to patronize something that's been there for so long. A lot of times I spend time in the Central Quarter because that's the closest place where I can go and eat and sit down and eat because I don't have sit-down restaurants. I had just fast food feeding into the diabetes in North St. Louis. So when you make all of these decisions about putting these millions and millions of dollars into another community again and again about jobs, those same jobs will be created if they put that money in your community. Alderman from the 4th, Alderman from the 3rd, Alderwoman from the 2nd, Alderwoman from the 27th, Alderman from the 22nd. All that same money could be put into our community and have those same jobs. What is it that tells them it's okay to keep creating jobs someplace else and none in our community? What is it that tells them to put millions and billions of dollars in another community and then we say, okay, we got to just believe that it'll be different. We do not have to keep believing it. I don't because the proof is in the pudding. It has not occurred that way, no matter how they promised it. And this particular bill is one for you to know that if it were really going to happen, this would be where they said, yeah, we want to fix at the convention center, and hey, guys, can you think maybe we could keep 2 or 3 million and we could do a smaller expansion and then we could do it in stages, because you can do upgrades in stages. They took all the money, added some more, and said, and let's make it 40 years. Now, we got upset about the airport deal, which they said is not a sale and different amounts of times of how much the lease is going to be. But here we are doing a 40-year deal. You will not be here, Alderman. Unless I get to be 102, I will not be here. I hope the Alderman from the 3rd is here so he can get up and say, Alderwoman Tice used to tell me about this. I want you to stay down here like your father for 30-something years so you can get up and say, and they still lying, okay? Because that's what they will be doing. They're not making a mistake. They're on purpose lying and indicating that we have to do this. We do not have to do this. Those same jobs could be created in the 3rd Ward, the 4th Ward, the 18th, the 21st, 22nd, the 1st. All of those jobs could be created there, and we could see a thriving North St. Louis. When I came down to the board, I think the city, St. Louis was the #1 city in the state. Kansas City has blew past us, and it continued to grow, because one thing about their black elected officials there, if you put something in there, you're going to do some stuff in the park that is African American, okay? You're going to be on Prospect, you're going to be on Paseo, you're going to be on streets where the African American, you got the black museum for ball players, they're going to make you do some things. We just do platitude, and then we go along and vote for it, and we get nothing for it, okay? And $10 million is no money. When you telling me you got 105, put that 105 right over here. Tell the convention center we got to put a Band-Aid on you, because we got to tear down all these vacant houses. We got to cut grass. We got to build some. We got to do. We got to rebuild a natural bridge, and then we'll get back to you, the convention center, because the convention center is for all of us, okay? And when you talk about convention and tourism, I will tell you, go open up a tourism book. When they look at the books, and I'll give you one. They talk about the Hill, Central Corridor, the Fox area, South St. Louis, and we don't exist in the tourism books. So even when we have, open up your books and look at them. Even when we have black tourists that come here, they can go to the food place over on off the Grand Center. And there's a very few places, but we don't even get money spent in our own community with convention and tourism because we're not promoted. So you are exactly right. They're not even in the books, because what they say is don't go there. Don't go there. It's dangerous to live there. So we are downgraded in the press. We are spoken of as if there's no place in North St. Louis that's good to live. Then people will come over and say, well, I didn't know over here, and I didn't know that you had houses like that. Well, you don't, why would you know? You don't come and you don't care. And we act like we don't care when we continue to vote for this stuff. And so the community is angry with us, and they are rightfully angry with us. And so all of these false promises are just that, false promises. I'm here 25, 27 years later to tell you they don't keep their word. And that's why I vote no so much, because you can easily give me the vote yes. Show me what you're going to do. Start doing it. Stop talking about what you're going to do in 20 years, in 30 years. Now is the time. You've already spent all that money. Nobody says I'm lying when I talk about how much money we spent. It's even more that I'm not talking about. And then people say, well, we can't do it in North St. Louis. I was already doing it. Why would you tear up what was already happening? If your intent is to do good, wherever there's somebody that's being able to get it done, if your intent is for that to grow in North St. Louis, that should have been, what can we do to help her get that done? You told me that sometimes when you want to come to the store, you come down to Natural Bridge and Union to go to the grocery. That's ridiculous, okay? That is ridiculous. That's sad. It's not right. It shouldn't be. So the only way we stop it is we have to stop encouraging it and stop saying, oh, well, I'm going to do it this time, but next time do better. There is no next time, because between now and 1991, there would be something that we could say besides NGA. No disrespect to it, but it would be something we could say. And Mr. President, members of the board, if the alderman from the 27th would yield, I'm sorry, not the 27th,
The 7th.
would yield.
Alderman from the 7th will yield the question to the Alderwoman from the 1st.
Yes.
Alderwoman from the 1st, please proceed.
Thank you. Mr. President, Alderman, you talk about we're buying $105 million in bonds, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, but when does the repayment start?
The repayment would start, I'd have to check my stuff from the comptroller. Hold on 1 second.
2019. It doesn't start to 24?
Right.
So what is it that I see in the bill that talks about in 19 when we finish paying our 21? No, year.
I apologize. I misspoke. It would start in 21. 21, sorry.
I thought so.
The existing revenue, the existing bonds at the current schedule would be done being paid off in 2024.
Okay. So So it starts the minute that we pay for this football stadium where we don't have a football team. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, but as I said before, we were told that would never happen. So what happens if something happens to, that we need to redo the convention center in the next 25, this is 40 years, but most certainly in that 40 years, we're gonna need to redo it again. What happens then?
Well, I suppose we'd have to, a future Board of Aldermen would have to address that. I mean, is the building going to need work between now and 40 years from now? Yes, I suspect it will.
Okay, so.
I can't predict that far down the road.
Yeah, I think we all can predict. If you own a house, you know that if you're there for 40 years, you're going to have to put a new roof, new gutters, all kind of things, windows. There's nothing, that's what I tell people who want to do home ownership. It's not what you think it is. So I think pretty much if you're a homeowner and you're not in a condo, you will know that not only in 40 years, in 30 years and 20 years, there will be work to do on a building if you want to keep it up to date. So we talked about, and so the repayment starts in 21, and that is that $2 million is set aside for maintenance, and then the $6 million that we're currently paying toward the stadium. Is that correct?
This $6 million that's currently being pledged towards paying down the debt on the dome.
Yeah.
Yes, those payments would be, new bonds would be issued and those payments would be extended beginning in 2021. And the $2 million that we're already paying right now, we would be extending those payments as well. And we would be, as the Alderman from the 24th pointed out, and as I believe Kitty mentioned in her presentation and is included in Mr. Garavaglia's remarks when he spoke to the committee, that $2 million maintenance payment that we're making now will be extended.
Any of those people, Mr. Garavaglia, live in North St. Louis that you know of?
I don't know where Mr.
No, he does
Garavaglia
not.
lives. I know he's a deputy
Kitty live in
comptroller
North
for the
St. Louis?
city. I'm sorry?
Does Kitty live in North St. Louis?
No, I don't believe so.
I know she does not. I know where the comptroller lives. She lives on the edge of the Central Quarter, one block away. In fact, half a block away. Anybody that actually lives and owns property in North St. Louis that told you what a great deal this was for our whole community, not just for downtown?
I don't know.
Well, when you throw names around, I like for you to throw names around that are relevant to me, is what I'm saying. When you tell me the comptroller, I've known the comptroller longer than you, for 40-something years. But again, her thing is to talk about bonds. It's not to talk about if it's a good deal for the city. That's not her position as a comptroller. She comes out and says, we can, this will affect our credit rating, or it will not. But whether it is a good thing for the city, it's a whole different thing for the entire city. Thank you, Alderman. I don't have any further questions. I continue to oppose this bill. I oppose it as a person who's been here all these many years, and all the lies that have been told, and all the purposeful withdrawal of any kind of support or building in North St. Louis while we build at a fast and furious pace in other parts of the community. I'm sitting with a second-generation alderman from the 3rd, and basically he's now coming to the same thing that me and his dad used to say for years after years after years. And so it's very hard to try to build up your community when the city of St. Louis, starting with the people who are on ENA, do not represent an entire part of the city. It is not in our best interest. You didn't even try to negotiate for us. You didn't try to say, look, let's put a few million across. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Every member of the board of ENA ought to be ashamed of yourself that you would not even recognize that 1/3 of the city is North St. Louis. Shame on all of you all.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 7th, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would ask for your favorable consideration of this board bill, 133 committee substitute. I won't even get into talking about some of the false statements that were made. I will point out that contrary to my colleague from the 3rd, the CBC does not spend its advertising dollars in the city of St. Louis or in the region. That would be self-defeating. They spend it in many other markets. By doing this and by agreeing to expand the convention center again, which is still contingent on the county participating, we're going to not only protect thousands of jobs that are a direct result of the of the convention and tourism industry in this city. We're also going to be hopefully growing our convention business, which has suffered greatly in the last few years due to regional events, but also due to the declining facilities. And the convention center staff goes to great lengths to talk to customers of the Americas Center, both past and hopefully future, to ask them, what do you need? What do you want to see out of this building? And they've taken that seriously, and these improvements are intended to address some of those concerns. And I again would point out that we're taking money that is already pledged towards debt at that facility, at the Dome specifically, and extending those payments to cover the costs of these improvements, again, in conjunction with St. Louis County. With that, I renew my motion. Thank you.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 19th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 133, Committee Substitute. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingrassia. Alderman Coatar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Spencer. 21 aye votes, 3 no votes, and 1 present.
By vote, you sustain the motion of the Alderman from the 7th and third read and finally pass Board Bill 133, Committee Substitute.
Board Bill 157, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingrassia, an ordinance approving a blighting study and redevelopment plan for Shoto, Jefferson, LaSalle, Missouri, Hickory, Mackey Place redevelopment and containing a severability clause.
Alderman from the 6th, you recognize on third reading and final passage of Board Bill 157.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we pass, third read and finally pass Board Bill 157.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. Alderwoman, please proceed.
Mr. President, I'd just like to renew my motion.
Any discussion? Any further discussion? Further discussion? Alderwoman from the 6th, you recognize the close on Board
Thank
Bill
you,
157.
Mr. President. I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd, that we third read and final pass Board Bill number 157. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingrassia. Alderman Coatar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Spencer. 25 aye votes and 2 present.
By vote, you sustain the motion. Alderman from the 6th and 3rd read and finally passed Board Bill 157.
Board Bill 173, Committee Sub, sponsored by Alderman Oldenburg, President Reed, Alderman Boyd, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderman Coatar, and Alderwoman Howard. An ordinance creating a new chapter under Title 23 of the Revised Code of the City titled Small Wireless Facilities and pertaining to the establishment of procedures and requirements relating to the construction and development of small wireless facilities to be codified as Chapter 23.59 of the Revised Code containing a severability clause, savings clause, and emergency clause.
Alderman from the 16th, you recognize on 3rd reading final passage of Board Bill 173, Committee Substitute.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move that we third read and finally pass Board Bill 173, Committee Substitute.
Moved by the Alderman from the 16th, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. Please proceed, Alderman.
I have no further discussion points on this, Mr. President. I will entertain any more questions on the board bill, though.
All right. Alderman from the 24th, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to vote no just because I don't want these on streetlight poles on the street. I think we don't know what they're going to look like exactly. I think many folks are not going to be particularly happy with how they do look. I wish we could confine them to alleys to not sort of, I don't know, reduce the visual appeal of some of our streets and neighborhoods. We have lots of utilities and alleys. Maybe they'll end up there. I hope they end up there. But to me, it's not 100% clear. And I know people want faster internet, but they also want attractive streetscapes. So for that reason, I'm going to vote no. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with my colleague from the 24th Ward. I, support this bill in terms of, the services that it could provide for the city, but I do believe, having been down here for a number of years, that you have to look no further than, Grand when it comes to like Slough's Medical Center with how well the city manages our public right-of-way. The city allowed, basically Slough to put in these massive billboards right in the middle of South Grand. Excuse me. Further, AT&T, I think we're all familiar with the, white PVC piping with the little orange, topping on it that dots our city's fair landscape next to sidewalks and streets everywhere throughout the city. Laclede Gas at one point was going around putting gas meters and gas exchanges onto the facades of houses throughout the city. So I have a fair level of skepticism on the part of the city in terms of how they would manage this, from making sure that our streets are aesthetically sound and that we're not going to litter our landscape with these types of things. And so, I wish that we maybe had a little bit more parameters in this board bill in terms of how that would work out. And for that reason, I'm going to vote no as well.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 16th, you recognize the close.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Those are points well taken from my colleagues from the 24th and the 25th. I appreciate those. If you do look in the bill on page 6, line 15, there is a stealth concealment provision in this bill. I know that may not 100% satisfy my colleagues from the 24th or 25th on that, but the architectural features of these structures need to be designed to camouflage or otherwise be concealed, and it is up to the city to make sure that we do that. So with that, I will ask for everyone's favorable consideration, and I will renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 16th, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill 173, Committee Substitute. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingrassia. Alderman Coatar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. 24 aye votes and 2 no votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion of the Alderman from the 16th and third read and finally passed Board Bill 173, Committee Substitute.
That is the extent of third reading report of engrossment.
Alderman from the 17th, you're recognized.
Yes, Mr. President. In accordance with rule number 48, I'd like to, having voted on the prevailing side, request that Board Bill number 166, Committee Substitute, which I was the primary sponsor of, be reconsidered.
All right. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 17th, having voted on the prevailing side, making a motion to reconsider Board Bill 166, Committee Substitute. Entertain a second, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 14th. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Oh,
Go ahead. Please,
I
please
was
proceed.
standing. I'm sorry, Mr. President. All I was going to say was this was me being asleep at the switch. It came out of committee with the. It's a routine bill, but I had made a request of additional information, which I have not been provided, and I'd advised them that I was going to go ahead and put it on the informal calendar until I got that, and I was asleep at the switch, and so it got perfected last week and inadvertently got third read this week. So my intent is to undo the third reading, undo the perfection, put it back on the informal calendar, get the resolution, and I'll share all that information with you when we get it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 14th, that we reconsider the vote, the third reading vote for Board Bill 166, Committee Substitute. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingrassia. Alderman Coatar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. 27 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion. Alderman from the 17th. Madam Clerk, please place Board Bill 166, Committee Substitute, on the third reading calendar.
So noted.
Alderman from the 17th, you're now recognized.
So it's now on the third reading
It's on the
calendar?
third reading
Okay, so I...
Make a motion to reconsider if you are going to have
Yeah.
to change it,
All right,
so that
that's
we
what-
take it back to the perfection calendar.
All right, thank you. I would move that we reconsider the third pass, the
Perfection.
perfection of Board Bill number 166, Committee Substitute.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 17th that we reconsider the perfection of Board Bill 166, Committee Substitute, which
Previous roll, please.
and it's been a motion by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd, and there's been a request for previous roll. Hearing no objection, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please place Board Bill 166, Committee Substitute on the perfection calendar. Alderman from the 17th.
That on the informal calendar, perfection?
At the request of the sponsor, please remove Board Bill 166, Committee Substitute, from the regular perfection calendar and place it on the perfection informal calendar.
So noted.
Report of enrollment.
Board Bills 160, 51, 125, 127, 138, 163, 28, 29, 114, 126, 131, 162, 168, 99, 158, 109, 72, 133 committee sub, 169, 157, and 173 committee sub.
All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. Alderman from the 19th, you recognize on the motion for the courtesy resolutions calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I ask for approval of our courtesy consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 19th, seconded by the Alderman from the 13th and, 22nd, and Alderman from the 22nd. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
First reading of resolutions.
Resolution 203, sponsored by Alderman Coatar, St. Louis Parking Company, and the City of St. Louis Enhanced Enterprise Zone.
On the previous motion, courtesy resolutions calendar passed. Alderman from the 7th, you recognized on the first reading of resolution 203.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to refer Resolution 203 to the HUD's committee.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please assign Resolution 203 to HUD's.
So noted. That is the extent of first reading of resolution.
Second reading.
We have none.
Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Friday, December 21st, no meeting, winter holiday break. That is the extent of the announcements.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I have several announcements. The breakfast with Santa went over well. We entertained over 600 children, gave them haircuts, fed them breakfast, gave them toys, and a bag of fruit. They had a great time. They had 3 toys per individual. They had a great time, and we also auctioned off or raffled off 10 bicycles. So the kids had a great time, and I want to thank all the sponsors, everyone that participated. Thank you, Mr. President, for showing up.
It was
Mayor
a
showed
wonderful
up.
event.
Thank the labor unions for giving us the coats. Put a coat on every child's back. I want to thank the carpenters for that, and Chip, all those that were sponsors. And I'd like to have a moment of silence for Miss Emily Brown Bosley, our former colleague, Freeman Bosley's senior sister.
Will everybody in the chambers and galleries who's able to stand to please rise for a moment of silence for Miss Emily Bosley, who passed away.
Monday, December the 31st, FAST, Families Advocating Safe Streets, will have a prayer vigil for those commemorating those who lost their lives to violence. It'll be at 1500 Union at 4 o'clock, New Year's Eve. We're asking all you to attend, commemorating those. I don't know how many will be by the 31st, but it's Monday, the 31st of December at Williams Temple, 1500 Union at 4 o'clock, commemorating those who lost their lives to violence this year. Be there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, tomorrow is Christmas on the Hill from noon until 5 at the corner of Wilson Marconi in front of St. Ambrose Church. There'll be carriage rides, food, things to do, and get your picture taken with Luigi the reindeer. Thank you.
All right, Alderman from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tomorrow, the 27th Ward will sponsor with St. Louis Family Church their 11th year of our Build-A-Bag event, and it'll be at Northwest High School. We will deliver 1,500 Christmas dinners to the residents of the 2nd and the 27th Ward. And I'm excited because Lisa Middlebrook and myself have worked hard to build this up. We will deliver 260 families, Christmas toys, and dinners. And so we went over on the volunteers we had. Our target was 100, and I think she and I had got over that this year.
Awesome.
So we're inviting everybody to attend. It'll be at Northwest. We'll be at 7:30 a.m. where we'll kick it off.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. Let's give them a round of applause for that hard work. Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I wanted to first thank all those who have made contributions on behalf of the needy in the city of St. Louis, and most especially those families who have struggled for a long time. And one of the reasons why we don't understand and we give misinformation about our community is that the collective services that are provided, we are not promoting those services to the people. So if they knew more about things that could help them, it would be better. And so we're working on a targeted effort right now with 5 of the largest service agencies in the region, and we will be doing just that. And so I'm looking forward to next year. I'm also looking forward to having a better, more coordinated effort to provide expected improvements for the city, most especially North St. Louis. And most especially to our unions, I'm going to say thank you to you again, because you go out of your way to make sure that those who have less, you help them. And you go out of your way to make sure that we can provide jobs, because you've broken some of your own rules that you've had for 100 years so that people can come into the unions and get these good jobs. I thank you for that. And tomorrow, the Lawyers Association is providing the Christmas party for about 350 of the children from the 19th Ward. I thank you for that. I won't be there, but I know that they always have a good time, and they feel very, very blessed for the experience. For those of you, colleagues here who are interested and have the time, come by for the street dedication for Cedric the Entertainer at Vandevender and Olive at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 14th.
Yes, I'd like to remind people that tomorrow at Das Vivos, Santa will be landing, and he'll be there to receive the children that come by. Also, on a more serious note, I'd like to acknowledge and ask each of the members of the board here to keep Teresa Chambers, one of our secretaries, in their thoughts and prayers. She's had some serious health concerns, and we pray for her well-being.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 18th.
No.
If you have an announcement, do it. Otherwise, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move that we excuse the Alderman from the 20th for necessary absence.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 27th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move that the board adjourns until Friday, January 11th, 10 a.m., 2019.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Stand adjourned.